I never thought betrayal could cut this deep, not when it came from the very people I had spent my entire life trying to please. My name is Violet. I'm 34 years old, and for the past 2 years, I've poured every ounce of my energy into working double shifts, skipping weekends, and putting aside every extra dollar. My dream wasn't a fancy car, or even a house of my own. No, I had one dream. I wanted to give my parents something unforgettable, a trip across Europe, just the three of us, where I could finally give back for all the sacrifices I thought they had made for me. I planned everything down to the smallest detail. Flights booked to Paris, a week of luxury hotels, guided tours through cobblestone streets, dinners in candlelit restaurants overlooking the Seine. I even had color-coded folders for each day, every confirmation printed and highlighted. I imagined their faces when we stepped onto the Champs-Élysées together, when they tasted real Italian gelato in Florence, when we watched the sunset on the Arno. I thought this trip would finally be the memory that brought us closer, proof that I was a good daughter who had made them proud. But the morning of the trip, everything unraveled. I pulled into their driveway at 6:02 a.m., just 2 minutes later than I promised. My mom stood on the porch, suitcase in hand, and behind her my sister Lauren appeared with her own luggage. I froze, confusion clouding every thought. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to steady my voice. "Oh, Violet," my mom said far too cheerfully. "We decided Lauren should come instead of you. She's been so stressed lately, she really needs this trip." I felt the words pierce me like a knife. "Instead of me, Mom, I planned this trip. I paid for everything." She waved her hand as if brushing off something trivial. "We're grateful, sweetheart, but you're always working. You can take another trip later. Lauren needs this right now." I glanced at my sister, waiting for even a flicker of guilt. But she only smirked, her voice dripping with fake gratitude. "Thanks for understanding, sis." The ground beneath me seemed to tilt. My dad shuffled out, next suitcase in hand, avoiding my eyes. No one cared that I had been the one to make this dream possible. In their eyes, Lauren would always come first. I clenched my jaw so hard it ached, biting back, the words burning on my tongue. Instead, I forced a smile and loaded their bags into my car. "Let's get going then," I said flatly. The drive to the airport was suffocating. Lauren filled the silence with her chirpy chatter about shopping in Paris, while my mom chuckled along as if I wasn't even in the car. At one point my dad muttered, "Thank you for driving us, Violet. I know this probably feels unusual." "Unusual," I repeated under my breath, my grip tightening on the wheel until my knuckles turned white. When we arrived at the airport, I unloaded their luggage, my patience hanging by a thread. My mom hugged me as if nothing was wrong. "Thank you for understanding, sweetheart. This means a lot to us and to Lauren." Lauren wheeled her suitcase toward the terminal, tossing me a smug smile. "You're the best, Violet." I stood there watching them disappear, my chest heavy with anger and grief. This was supposed to be our trip, a gift from me to them. Instead, I was left behind, discarded like I never mattered. The drive back home blurred into a haze of bitterness. Every word replayed in my mind. "Lauren needs this more. Don't make this a big deal. You can take another trip later." Each one cut deeper. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I was shaking with rage. Without a second thought, I marched inside, opened my laptop, and logged into every travel account I had used. One by one, I canceled the hotel reservations, the tours, even the upgrades. Confirmation emails flooded my inbox as my chest finally loosened. If they wanted Lauren instead of me, fine. But they would not enjoy it on my dime. By the time I shut my laptop, a strange calm had replaced my fury. They could figure out the trip without me. I was done being their doormat. By the time the plane touched down in Paris, my parents and Lauren were still oblivious. They thought they had stepped into the dream I had carefully designed. My mom even texted me a photo of the three of them at Charles de Gaulle Airport, Lauren in the center, beaming like she had earned it. I stared at the screen for a long time before setting the phone down. I didn't reply. Hours later, the calls began. "Violet." My mom's voice was shrill through the receiver. "What happened to the hotel?" "We showed up and they said there was no reservation under our name." I almost smiled. "That's strange. Maybe Lauren can sort it out," I said coolly, and then I hung up. Minutes later, my dad called. His tone was sharper. "This isn't funny, Violet. We've been walking around Paris with our luggage for an hour. The hotel says the booking was cancelled yesterday. Yes, I said simply. Buy me. Silence stretched on the line, followed by a low, furious growl. What did you do? What I should have done from the start, I answered. Enjoy your trip. And then, I ended the call again. The next day another frantic text popped up. Tours cancelled. Lauren is upset. We can't get tickets for anything you promised. I could picture it so clearly. Lauren whining about missing the Louvre. My mom fussing over her like she was royalty. My dad red-faced and trying to salvage their pride in a foreign country where nothing was working out. They had taken what was never meant for them, and now they were choking on the reality of their choice. By day 3, their tone shifted from panic to accusation. My mom left a long voicemail, her voice trembling between anger and guilt. Violet, how could you? We're stranded here. Your father had to book some dingy motel at triple the cost. Lauren is miserable. She keeps saying this trip is ruined. Don't you care about your family at all? I replayed her words twice, letting the irony soak in. Don't you care about your family at all? The same family that had looked me in the eye, tossed my gift aside and told me I didn't deserve to be there. They had cared so little for me that they'd stripped me out of my own dream. And now they wanted sympathy. I didn't call back. Instead, I went about my week in peace. I cooked dinner for myself, slept in for once, even walked along the river near my apartment with my headphones on, breathing freely without the weight of their expectations. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was clawing for scraps of their affection. I felt free. When they returned a week later, their faces told the whole story. My mom looked exhausted. My dad older than I had ever seen him, and Lauren sulked behind them, dragging a scuffed suitcase. They didn't bring me souvenirs, not even a postcard. The silence at baggage claim was deafening until Lauren finally snapped. You ruined everything. That was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime. I turned to her, my voice steady. No, Lauren. That was supposed to be my trip with our parents. You stole it, and all I did was make sure you didn't get to enjoy it at my expense. My mom gasped like I had slapped her, but my dad didn't meet my eyes. For once he had no words. We rode home in silence, the tension suffocating. At the house they expected me to carry their bags inside like always, but I stopped at the driveway. This is where I draw the line, I said. You chose Lauren over me. You made it clear who matters in this family. Don't come asking for more sacrifices from me. I'm done. I walked away as they stood frozen on the porch, and for the first time, I felt taller than all of them. I thought drawing a line would be the end of it, that the quiet would hold. It didn't. It just left a bruise where the noise used to be. For 3 days after they came back from Europe, no one called. No guilt texts, no fake cheerful invitations for dinner. The silence felt like something I had earned, clean, earned silence. On the 4th night, my father's name lit up my phone. I let it ring out. A minute later, a message arrived. Come by tomorrow. We need to talk like a family. Like a family. Those words used to be bait I couldn't resist. Now they tasted like old tin. I slept, woke up early and made coffee in my tiny kitchen. I took the long way to their house, the route that cut by the river and the bakery that opens at dawn, so I could walk in with something warm in my hands and armor around my heart. I told myself I was going for closure, not permission. As soon as I stepped into their living room, Lauren's voice slid under my skin. Finally, she sighed, sprawled on the sofa under a blanket like a dethroned queen. We've been waiting all morning. My mother stood by the mantel, eyes polished with disappointment. My father sat at the dining table with a stack of papers and a calculator like he was preparing for trial. No hugs, no how have you beens, just a courtroom. We're concerned. My mother began smoothing the edge of a placemat. About this hostility. I canceled reservations I paid for after you replaced me, I said evenly. If that's hostility, I can live with it. My father leaned forward, jaw working. You made an immature decision that caused hardship. Your mother and sister were forced to stay in a substandard place. We had to use our emergency fund. You owe this family an apology. I let myself look at him for a long time, really look. The man who had taught me to ride a bike and said he'd always catch me if I fell. The man who watched me work 2 jobs last year and said he was proud. Betrayal makes strangers of people you love. No, I said softly. I don't, Lauren huffed. God, Violet, you're so dramatic. You're the one who said we needed a special memory. We made one. She smirked a small white knife. You should have thought ahead. I did, I said, for 2 years. My father slid a paper across the table. Think ahead to this. I glanced down. A bank statement. Another. My name. Automatic transfers monthly going out of my account to theirs. I recognized them. I'd set them up after Mom's surgery 2 winters ago. But there were others I didn't recognize. Lines of payments I had never authorized, all funneled into a loan for something called Lawrence & Cody Ventures LLC. My throat closed. What is this? My mother's hands trembled. We thought you knew. Lauren stared at the ceiling, expression blank. Oh right, that what? The boutique? She said it like she was bored. It didn't work out. The lease was predatory, the foot traffic was a lie, the landlord hates creatives. We had to get the loan somehow. Dad said you'd help. You always help. The room went still. You took out a business loan in my name. My father rubbed his forehead. We co-signed for you. It's practically the same. You have the credit. Lauren needed a boost. I never signed for this, I whispered. He slid another paper across the table. My signature, or something masquerading as it. The V was wrong. Mine climbs like a ladder. This one slumped like a tired wave. The notary stamp looked legitimate, but I had never set foot in that office. My hands began to shake, but not with fear, with heat. The kind that moves up your spine and changes your posture. You forged me. Don't be dramatic, my mother snapped, voice cracking. We did what parents do. We helped our family. We expected you to be grateful. The rage that rose in me wasn't loud. It was steady. It sat down in my bones and made itself comfortable. You helped yourselves to my life, I said. You helped Lauren to my future. You used my name like a spare key. My father's eyes flashed, and for the first time I saw something raw there, panic. We had no choice. Your sister was struggling, she's fragile, you're strong. I laughed, a small broken thing that tasted like salt. Strong doesn't mean disposable. The calculator's plastic buttons clicked under his thumb. It's a small amount comparatively. He pointed at a figure I didn't want to read aloud. My chest tightened. It was everything I'd saved beyond the trip. House money. One-day money. My mother folded her arms like a grade school principal. Here's what we're proposing. You reinstate the transfers for the next 6 months so we can get back on our feet. Lauren needs to focus on her mental health after the trauma you caused with that trip. And you'll help her negotiate the lease termination. You're good at those corporate things. And in return, I asked. She blinked, confused. In return, we forgive the trouble you've caused. A quiet settled into me then. Not peace, not shock. Just a decision. I picked up my phone and opened my banking app. As they watched, I froze. The transfer line flagged the unknown payments and requested an immediate hold for suspected fraud. I scrolled to my email, drafted a message to the bank's fraud department, attached the signature that was not mine, and clicked send. What are you doing? My father asked, color draining from his face. Protecting myself, I said, and filing a police report. You wouldn't. My mother breathed a prayer or a threat. I looked at Lauren. You built a life on I'll just borrow, Violet. That life ends today. She flung the blanket aside, eyes hard. You think anyone is going to believe you'd turn on your own family? I think they'll believe my credit report, I said. I think they'll believe the notary who will confirm I wasn't in her office on that date. And the landlord who will happily testify you threatened to sue him for bad vibes. My father stood up so fast his chair scraped. If you do this, you're dead to us. I took a breath and found something tender at the center of me. Something that had survived anyway. You did that the morning you chose Lauren at the curb. I left the house with the papers in my bag and the cold on my cheeks. In the car, I called the credit bureaus, placed freezes, then dialed a number I'd saved long ago and never used, a legal aid clinic for identity theft and family fraud. The woman on the other end had a warm voice and a clear plan. We'll start with an affidavit, she said. Then a notarized dispute. You'll be okay. I hung up and looked at my hands on the steering wheel. They felt like my hands again. That night, as the city settled, my phone erupted. 10 missed calls, 3 voicemails. A long text from my mother about betrayal and shame, and how Lauren has always been sensitive. I listened to none of it. I wrote a single message and sent it to our family thread. Going forward, all communication through my attorney. Do not contact me directly. The next morning a letter arrived from the bank requesting documentation. I made copies, labeled everything with the care I used to reserve for building a dream trip. I understood something then. Revenge wasn't screaming or ruining a vacation. Revenge was order. Revenge was boundaries drawn in ink. Revenge was the exact shape of the box where my name belonged, and where it never would again. The following weeks became a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and unexpected strength I didn't know I had. Fraud affidavits, notarized statements, credit freezes. Every line I wrote, every form I filed, felt like one stitch in repairing the fabric of my life they had tried to tear apart. Lauren, of course, didn't stop. She texted me constantly, long strings of insults followed by sudden pleas for sympathy. You're ruining my life. You're supposed to be my sister. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I blocked her number. My parents were subtler, but no less relentless. My mother showed up at my door, once her hands shaking, as she clutched a casserole dish. Violet, this is family business. We can settle this without outsiders. Please don't shame us like this. I looked at the casserole, then back at her. You already shamed me when you forged my name, I said. This isn't family business anymore, this is legal business. Her lips pressed together, her pride warring with her panic. You've always been the strong one, she whispered. You don't need the money like Lauren does. Something inside me cracked at that. Years of being told I was strong, so they could heap more weight on my back. Strong doesn't mean I'm your bank, I said, and I closed the door. When the investigation began in earnest, my parents' tone shifted from pleading to vicious. Their lawyer sent me a letter claiming I had willingly consented to the financial arrangement, and that any accusations of fraud were grossly exaggerated. My attorney responded with the forged signature, time-stamped evidence of my location at the time, and a list of witnesses ready to testify. I thought I'd feel fear. Instead, I felt fire. News of the dispute spread quietly in our community. I caught whispers at the grocery store, saw the pity in neighbors' eyes. But there was something else too: admiration. Other people who had been burned by their families began reaching out in subtle ways. One woman, a cashier I barely knew, leaned close as she scanned my items. Don't back down, she murmured. I wish I had fought when they stole from me. Her words stayed with me. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every person who had been told to stay quiet for the sake of family, every person sacrificed at the altar of someone else's weakness. The first court hearing arrived faster than I expected. My hands trembled as I walked into the courthouse, the echoes of footsteps on polished marble floors following me. My parents and Lauren sat together at the opposite table, a perfect picture of unity. My mother wore pearls. My father's jaw was tight. Lauren looked bored, scrolling on her phone, until the bailiff barked at her to put it away. When the judge asked me to speak, I rose. My voice shook at first, but then it steadied. Your Honor, I saved for years to build a future for myself. My parents and sister took out a loan in my name without my consent. They forged my signature. They drained my savings. And when confronted, they justified it by calling me strong, as if strength makes theft acceptable. The judge studied me over his glasses. Do you have evidence? I handed over the stack I had guarded for weeks. The fraudulent loan papers, my real signatures for comparison, affidavits from colleagues confirming my location that day. Every page was a brick in the wall of truth I was building around myself. Across the room, my mother's face drained of color. My father shifted uncomfortably. Lauren whispered furiously to their lawyer. The judge nodded slowly. This case warrants further review. For now, all financial activity tied to these accounts will be frozen. Any further use will be considered contempt of court. It was only a temporary victory, but it felt like breathing clean air after years of suffocating. Outside the courthouse, reporters lingered. One shouted, "Do you regret taking legal action against your own parents?" I paused, the cameras on me, my reflection caught in their lenses. Then I said, I regret that they forced me to choose between silence and survival. I chose survival. The words spread farther than I expected. By evening, my phone buzzed with messages from strangers, some condemning me but many more thanking me. You gave me courage. I thought I was alone. That night, as I sat in my small apartment with the city lights blinking outside my window, I realized something. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. This was about reclaiming my voice. The one they had tried to strip away when they decided I wasn't worthy of my own gift, when they used my name as if it were their property, and I wasn't done speaking yet. The weeks that followed the hearing stretched into a strange, heavy quiet. My parents rarely reached out directly anymore. Their lawyer handled most of the venom. Lauren, however, doubled down. Anonymous accounts sent me messages online, thinly veiled threats, cruel memes mocking me as the sister who sues her own family. The style of writing was hers, childish and sloppy. She wanted me rattled. But instead I laughed. Every message was another crack in her mask, another reminder of just how desperate she had become. One evening my attorney called with an update. The financial review turned up more than expected, she said. Not only did they forge your signature for that boutique loan, but there are smaller withdrawals over the past 2 years, quiet transfers, all leading back to your sister. Thousands of dollars. My stomach twisted. So they'd been bleeding me long before the Europe trip. Yes, my attorney said, and the pattern shows intent. This strengthens your case. I thanked her, then sat in the dark for a long time. Rage simmered, but underneath it was something harder to face: grief. Grief for the parents I thought I had. Grief for the sister I once tried to protect. It felt like standing at a graveside mourning people who were still alive. The second hearing brought everything into the open. Bank officials testified about the irregular signatures. A notary admitted under oath that she had never met me, but had been pressured by family acquaintances to stamp the forms anyway. When the forged papers were read aloud, I watched my mother's hands tremble in her lap. My father stared at the floor. Lauren rolled her eyes like it was all a nuisance. When it was my turn, I stood again. My voice was stronger this time. For years, I believed that being strong meant carrying everyone else. I gave and gave and gave, until there was nothing left for me. And when I finally tried to give something to my parents, a trip, meant as gratitude, they handed it to my sister and told me I could take another trip later. That was the moment I understood. I was never their daughter. I was their resource. The courtroom was silent except for the scribble of pens. The judge's gaze was heavy but not unkind. By the end of the session, the ruling was clear. My parents and sister were barred from accessing any accounts tied to my name. The fraudulent loan would be investigated as a criminal matter. And most importantly, my financial liability was erased. Outside reporters swarmed again, microphones thrust toward me. "Do you feel vindicated?" one asked. I paused, then said, "I don't feel victorious. I feel free." And I walked past them into the cold air, breathing deeply for the first time in years. At home that night, Elizabeth, my closest friend, not my daughter, but the one who had become like family, brought over takeout. She wrapped me in a hug and said, "You're lighter, Vi, I can see it." I thought I'd feel guilt, I admitted. But all I feel is done. Done being the scapegoat. Done being the strong one who covers for everyone else. If that makes me the villain in their story, so be it, she smiled. Sometimes being the villain in their story is the only way to be the hero in your own. Her words settled deep in me. I realized then that revenge wasn't about destroying them. It was about refusing to let them destroy me any longer. But I also knew it wasn't over. My parents would retreat into their community, spinning their version of events. Lauren would play the victim draped in false fragility, and I would be painted as the cold, ungrateful daughter who turned against her blood. Let them, because I had the truth. And the truth, once spoken, doesn't vanish. It lingers. It seeps, it reshapes everything it touches. The final hearing came on a crisp autumn morning. The courthouse steps were littered with red and gold leaves, and as I climbed them, I realized my hands weren't shaking. For months I had carried the weight of their betrayal, but now it felt like the weight was lifting piece by piece. Inside, the judge read the ruling. The forged loan would be nullified, my credit fully restored, and my parents and sister held financially responsible for damages. The prosecutor would decide whether to pursue criminal charges against Lauren and my father for forgery and fraud. My attorney squeezed my shoulder gently when the decision was finalized. When it was over, my mother finally spoke. Her voice cracked like porcelain. "Violet, you've destroyed us." I met her eyes. "No, Mom. You destroyed us when you chose her over me. When you forged my name. When you decided I was strong enough to survive without love while Lauren was too fragile to live without theft. I didn't destroy us, I just stopped carrying the lie. For the first time she had no words. Lauren stormed out of the courtroom muttering about how unfair it all was, how I had always been jealous, how she deserved everything. My father followed, his face pale and drawn, the weight of his choices finally pressing down on him. My mother stayed a moment longer as if she wanted to say something else, but in the end she turned and walked away too. I stood there alone, and yet I didn't feel alone anymore. That evening I went home to my quiet apartment. I poured a glass of wine, lit a candle, and pulled out the folders that once held every detail of that perfect trip. The trip that was supposed to heal us. I thought about tearing them apart, but instead I tucked them away in a drawer. They weren't a symbol of betrayal anymore. They were a reminder of who I was. Someone who gave, who planned, who dreamed of beauty. That part of me hadn't been destroyed, it had only been redirected. Weeks later I booked another trip. This time not for my parents, not for Lauren. For me. A single ticket to Florence, where I would stand on the banks of the Arno and watch the sun set the way I had once imagined. I would eat gelato on the Ponte Vecchio, wander the cobblestone streets, and sit in candlelit restaurants without waiting for someone else's approval to enjoy it. It was mine now. When I told Elizabeth about it, she grinned. Finally, Vi, a trip for you, not them. Yes, I said softly, for me. The night before I left, I sat by the window thinking of the long road behind me. The sacrifices, the manipulation, the years of being told I was strong enough to live without tenderness. And I realized something important. Strength is not silent endurance. Strength is saying enough. Strength is drawing the line where no one can step over you again. To those of you listening, maybe you've been the strong one too. Maybe you've carried your family or your friends or your workplace until your back bent under the weight. Maybe you've been told you should endure because you can, while others are excused because they can't. I want you to hear this. You are not disposable. You are not just the strong one. You deserve care, protection, and joy just as much as anyone else. My story isn't just about revenge. It's about release. About finding peace and walking away from the people who would rather use me than love me. About realizing that blood doesn't excuse betrayal, and silence doesn't heal wounds. As I board my flight to Florence, I know I won't return the same woman. I will return lighter, freer, and finally my own. If my story resonated with you, I'd love for you to like this video, share it with someone who might need courage today. Subscribe for more true life stories and leave me a comment. Tell me, when was the moment you finally said enough?